everybody, and welcome to This Week in Keats, episode 4?
I think it's 4.
I think this is number 4.
To episode 4.
To episode 4.
I'm Mike Theune.
Welcome.
Welcome back. We trust you have your claret as well.
That's right.
Now's the time to take a sip of that.
Yeah, we're back on the claret. We had an episode with beer, and now
Didn't go half.
now we're back to Francis Ford Coppola and his delicious claret. Francis Ford, give us a call. Okay, so we've got exciting things to talk about this episode of This Week in Keats. 2 letters.
2. Same day.
Same day, November 22nd, 1817. Our boy Keats has traveled to Dorking, which is just 20 miles south of London. He's staying at the foot of Box Hill at the Burford Bridge Hotel, then called the Fox and Hound, I believe. Fox and Hounds.
Yeah.
But the hotel's still there today, so you can go
check it out.
Stay there.
Right.
And we've got 2 pretty remarkable letters. One to Benjamin Bailey and another to John Hamilton Reynolds. And they're loaded with ore.
Crazy.
Say. Yeah.
They load all their riff with ore.
Absolutely.
It's insane. So it's tough to kind of think about, but it's hard to live in this time with Keats without kind of thinking ahead about a month forward and to think about negative capability. But so in the negative capability letter, we're going to get that famous phrase, we're going to get all that, but look.
That's end of December coming up. And shameless plug, Mike and I are the co-editors of a volume collection of essays. Have you heard about this?
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
I think I have some revisions to do.
Yeah, we do. We both do. But a collection of essays focused on Keats's negative capability, and we're looking at new origins and afterlives. So the way that we're sort of reconsidering some of the origins of that phrase, how it comes to be, and then also the afterlives of negative capability, where it's been taken up in all these different contexts. So we're looking forward to that famous phrase.
Yeah. But part of the story of negative capability, there hasn't been a story told about negative capability that does not drive through at least one of these letters, and that's the letter to Bailey from November 22nd, just streams right through. So many indications of that. But I kind of want to, if it's okay, right? I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with negative capability. Let's let that come. For now, let's just try to take these letters kind of for what they are. Yeah. And oh my God, right? They're packed with amazing things. I mean, just the letter to Bailey, although I'd like to argue that it's the letter to Reynolds that kind of gives us the kind of decoder phrase there. And that is where Keats says in that letter, he says, that he's been reading his Shakespeare, his sonnets, right? And he says that they're filled with fine things said unintentionally, kind of through the working out of conceits.
In the intensity of working out.
That intensity.
Intensity is the key word in the negative capability letter. So we're going to leave behind negative capability, but know that the stuff going on in these 2 letters, it's prefiguring what we're going to see Keats do a month from now. But let's give me some of these fine phrases that Keats comes up with in these 2 letters.
The Bailey letter, just that letter itself has. So we've got. Let's start with men of genius, right? So this idea that their genius works has this kind of ethereal, subtle power that works its way over people. I think that's one of the early great phrases. Go.
Can I read it for you?
Please.
Okay, so this is in the letter to Bailey on November 22nd. Keats says, "Men of genius are great as certain ethereal chemicals operating on the mass of neutral intellect."
Yeah.
I think by is, so he writes by, but it's supposed to be but. They have not any individuality, any determined character. I would call the top and head of those who have a proper self men of power.
Uh-huh.
So we've got this distinction between men of genius and men of power, and certainly we can't escape negative capability.
Yep,
I mean,
already
you and
we're
I
right
have
there.
realized this,
Well,
right? Like,
already, right, you know that kind of my argument is, well, and Keats is clearly trying to figure out the nature of genius.
Yeah.
Right, and so here we have the introduction, and then just before what you read, right, Keats says, in passing, however, I must say one thing that has pressed upon me lately and increased my humility and capability of submission, and that is this truth, and then men of genius, right, so it's, a lot of people pointed to the issue that he says, right, capability there, and then negative capability, right, whether or not that's actually his phrase, but there it is. And now he's going to kind of connecting here capability and the issue of genius, and of course Keats is essentially trying to figure out what is literary genius, and he arrives at Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to see Shakespeare a little bit further
Yeah.
on here as well.
okay, so there's one.
One.
Give me some more.
Some more. So let's see. So then he has all of this great stuff, right, about the nature of the imagination, right? So he says, right, oh, I wish I was certain of the end of all your troubles as that of your momentary start about authenticity of the imagination. I am certain of
Hold on,
no-
hold
yeah.
on.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I cut you off before you
Please.
got to the good stuff.
Go
But
ahead.
what's interesting here, I mean, so Bailey's momentary start about the authenticity of the imagination. This is something we see in a lot of the letters where there's a reference to what the correspondent has written
Right.
that we don't
We
have
don't know.
access to.
That's right.
And I feel like this is a really crucial moment where Keats's thinking about imagination is filtered through and inspired by,
Of course.
Bailey's thoughts to him, right?
Yeah.
These are, in these letters, all
Yeah.
this thinking that Keats is doing, it's responsive, right? It's,
Of course.
It's interactive between the people he's writing.
Look, even if we don't know what Bailey had said, right, in the correspondence, we're going to find out in a number of the phrases that Keats comes up with. Like, Keats is essentially in a correspondence with other writers. It's going to be Milton, it's going to be Shakespeare, it's going to be, right, so he is in correspondence with them. And so here we get this ghostly half correspondence here with Bailey, but in kind of Keats's allusive artistry here, and in his phraseology, we're going to see the ways kind of in which he's communicating with all these other great artists.
Absolutely. And if we can offer a kind of argument that Mike and I are making about these two letters, if I may,
Go for it.
it might be something like this, that Keats's inventiveness is always rooted in elusiveness, right? When he's coming up with these amazing inventive moments where it seems like there's something so innovative and fresh about what he's offering us, it's always rooted in his reading of others.
Look, when Keats says to Shelley, right, an artist must serve mammon, that itself is an allusion, right, to the idea of mammon. Help me out. I think that is the Fairy Queen. And what happens in, please, I trust you're going to create a little scroll here. You'll correct me here if I'm wrong. Very good.
Internet.
But that, exactly. But the cave of Mammon actually is a cave of elusiveness. That within that work, there's all of these references to all these other things where it is about kind of the, right, what Bloom calls the anxiety of influence, right? But for Keats, it turns out, right, you just have to serve Mammon. Like, it's not anxious. You just kind of need to do it. And so there's a way in which, like, we see Keats as kind of, he is, again, loading riffs with ore, and this guy is just serving Mammon here by being this connector of all this kind of amazing stuff.
All right, so give us some more of these.
Well, so this
phrases.
one continues on, right? So he said, right, I'm certain of nothing but the holiness of the heart's affections and the truth of the imagination. What the imagination seizes as beauty must be truth, whether it existed before or not. Right? I mean, like, how can you read that? It's so hard, knowing what we know of Keats, to read that and not hear those last lines of Grecian Urn, right? I mean, crazy, right? Like, there's this letter is kind of this, I don't know, this a prequel to everything, so much that comes on.
Yeah.
But then, of course, then this very quickly turns into then continuing to think about the imagination, and the imagination may be compared to Adam's dream. He awoke and found it truth, right? And it's like, this is clearly a reference to Paradise Lost, Adam waking up, and right, he had the dream of Eve, he wakes up and there is Eve in the flesh, right? Yeah. And then, of course, right from there, geez, look at that, in just a few lines, right? So then, can it be that even the greatest philosopher ever arrived at his goal without putting aside numerous objections, however it may be, for a life of sensations rather than of thoughts?
That's, and right, in the space of just a few sentences, we have essentially 4 of these amazing moments in all of Keats' correspondence, right? The holiness of the heart's affections, that's a line that gets repeated and talked about all the time. What the imagination seizes as beauty must be truth. The imagination may be compared to Adam's dream. He awoke and found it truth. And for a life of sensations rather than of thoughts. This letter is really amazing for how much of these, or how many of these impressive, I guess they're coinings of a sort of verses.
Why does Bailey get these? Why Bailey? Right, so this is an interesting one recipient gets all of this attention. And maybe that's a silly question because there are plenty of Keats's letters. But like, this isn't a journal letter, right? Where it's months and months of right? So we get plenty of letters where Keats is writing for a long time. That's like, this is one day, it's one of at least 2 letters that he sends a day. And why does Bailey get it? And is it tied into his training in theology? Do you think that Keats and Bailey have had a kind of close enough correspondence that Keats has to kind of do, he's kind of doing natural supernaturalism. He's doing kind of, let's secularize this religious language, and I'm going to make this work for my friend Bailey here.
Yes, I think you're right. That this is Keats getting as close to doing philosophy as he does, right? Like,
by saying it can't be done. Consecutive reasoning, I can't do it, right?
So he's resistant to it, right? He recognizes that for him there are limitations to philosophic thinking, to consecutive reasoning. He talks about, he quotes Wordsworth later on, right? The years that should bring the philosophic mind.
Sure,
so,
of course.
And I think, in part it's because he and Bailey spent all this time earlier in the year at Oxford together, studying, right? Reading and discussing. Bailey with his
book learning.
Right, who's his guy, Jeremy, somebody, not Jeremy Bentham.
Not Bentham?
Taylor, Jeremy Taylor.
That's right,
We'll verify that later. So I think he finds in Bailey a philosophic mind that he can bounce stuff off of. Even as Keats himself is saying, right, for a life of sensations rather than of thoughts, right? He wishes that this
Bailey is a dilk whom you can actually impress, right? Where it's like, or Bailey's a dilk whose mind you can actually change.
We should explain what a dilk is. So Mike is referring to Charles Dilke, one of...
Actually, I just thought I made up that phrase.
Oh, okay,
Such a
Is
dilk.
it an acronym for something?
It is.
No, don't even go there. So in the negative capability letter, you can see we can't help but keep coming back to negative capability. We're monsters. But so in the negative capability letter, Keats says that he was having not a dispute, but a disquisition with his friend Charles Dilke. And it was then at that moment, several things dovetailed in his mind, and at once it struck him what quality went to form a man of achievement, especially in literature, and that he then names negative capability. And Dilke he sees as one of these...
he's a Godwin perfectibility man.
Right. A consecutive reasoner.
Absolutely.
Right? He's a
he has to have his mind made up about everything before he can make a decision.
Exactly. And so, and I think Bailey is sort of in that vein.
Sure.
But but more open to
Yeah.
the kind of uncertainty and skepticism
Yeah.
that Keats really appreciates. And so I think, that's an important part of why we see Bailey receiving a letter like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we've covered our main fine phrases. A quick sidebar here, just to reflect upon Keats's letters and the fine phrases that occur in them. Mike and I were
most of them. So go ahead. There's more.
There's more. There's more.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike and I were talking about the extent to which Keats he has a tendency towards these fine phrases that we then, as readers and appreciators and lovers of Keats, right, we know and we sort of, what's the word I'm not digest them.
Of course, they become part of, we metabolize them.
Oh, that's good.
How's that?
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks.
Anyway, so there are many examples of these kinds of things, and Mike and I were talking earlier about the film Bright Star, the biopic, or biopic. I prefer the pronunciation biopic.
I do too, but it sounds.
But it
is biopic.
I know, but biopic it sounds like a bionic man or something.
I agree, and it's kind of a counter to myopic.
Exactly.
Biopic. Yeah. It's like I can be myopic about my own life, but a biopic, it's like I have to at least have a sense that somebody else is alive so I can hear their story. Anyway, go.
I think biopics are always a little bit myopic. Continuing. So Bright Star, amazing film.
Love it.
We love it.
Oh.
Right, how could we not?
Yep.
But Mike and I we both had a similar experience watching it the first time, and I've talked to other Keatsians who had this too, where there was a kind of jarring response when so much of the dialogue in that film is lifted from the letters.
Yep.
And so the holiness of the heart's affections, right?
What scene does that occur in? Yeah.
I will tell you.
Please.
So there's a moment where Keats and Charles Brown get into this argument because Brown has been, saying, "Oh, Fanny Braun, she's just silly. Like, what do you care about her?"
Right. Slippery blisses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Keats gets up in his face and grabs him by the collar and says, "You know nothing of the holiness of the heart's affections." And
Academy Award.
Thank you. Yeah. Francis Ford Coppola.
Come on,
next
come
one,
on, man.
So
It's a game. It is a game to her. There is a holiness to the heart's affections. You know nothing of that.
it's a really fascinating moment in the movie because it's a powerful scene.
Yeah.
But I remember watching it the first time and I laughed at that moment because it felt so weird to have the character in this film saying this line that I knew was from the letters, and I was just like, it feels so off.
Sure.
So all of that is to say, we have in this letter in particular, right, these phrases that become so closely associated with Keats and his reputation, and this is not a knock on the film, right? I love the film, but that was a kind of stumbling block for me that I had to just be like, all right, so he's going to say all this stuff from the letters, whatever. It's weird and it feels unnatural if you know the letters, but then the beauty of the film won me over. And what the imagination seizes as beauty must be truth. So.
No, but I kind of like how the film kind of nods to Keats's the great beauty of his phrases, and to even kind of say look, if we even have to somewhat destroy kind of the seeming veracity of the movie, we're going to get these beautiful phrases in here, and it suffered because of there were a couple critics who were like, this is crazy, Keats never would have said that, he wrote it down, and look. Right, it's so clear with the allusiveness. It's the sort of thing, the holiness of the heart's affection is that's a sort of thing you can before Keats wrote that down, he sat there and his pen was in his mouth and he was like, what am I going to say here? And then he came up with it. But it's not very, very, very few people kind of can come up with that at the spur of the moment. Even Keats himself, who was a great wit among them, a great jokester, but so clearly he had to kind of think that through. But what I love is that it's like, the movie kind of says it's like, I don't even care if we ruin the reality of this movie. It's like we have to get those things in here, and somehow we have to have somebody vocalize them. Yeah. And Charles Brown wasn't going to be the person to say any of that stuff, right? So we have to put it in the mouth of Keats, right? So it's a weird, or it's either that or you do a kind of Ken Burns thing, right? And you kind of show a Keats letter and you have a voiceover, but that wouldn't have worked anyway.
Yeah. I've come around to your position. You've convinced me.
That was easy.
No, it's important for the film to have the language of Keats there. And
look, we've been seduced by it, right? So it's like, if this movie is going to go out and potentially reach other people who haven't maybe had the kind of interaction with Keats, it's like, let's use some of that phraseology and let's bring some of those people in. It's, there's a little bit of a kind of an apostolic outreach going on there. So to borrow kind of Bailey's religiosity.
Right.
To Keats.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, so let's get to our other.
A little bit more though here, right? I mean, so right then there's this beautiful stuff though as well about there's that great stuff, right? Nothing startles me beyond the moment. The setting sun will always set me to rights. Or if a sparrow come before my window, I take part in its existence and pick about the gravel. I mean, it's right. So this right here we have genius, we have empathy, right? We've got that Keats can feel out the sparrow's existence and he can imagine his way into it. We have all of these elements that of course everybody from Walter Jackson Bate on is now going to kind of turn into the kind of glorious roux that is negative capability.
Roux.
Nice. Just went with it. I like that.
I like it.
Thank you. I was going to say stew, but I went with roux. They rhyme.
That's true.
Stew. You suck. I went with roux.
I applaud.
It's got that silent X.
Wait, there's an X in.
There's an X.
Oh right.
Hold on. If I may, Brian.
Thank you. Well played, Tuning. Right, I forgot. It's ROUX.
It is. Yeah.
You're gonna rue the day.
Hey yo.
You crossed me.
I know I will. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So good. Crazy.
The sparrow picking about the gravel is. It's one of those moments where there are so many ways that Keats scholars can point to that and do interesting things with it, right? The way that he's reimagining embodiment, the kind of the radical empathy that it implies, right? That we're not talking about identification with another human, but a sparrow, right? This inconsequential little bird.
And picking about the gravel. It's like, it's not among grasses or wildflowers. It's like, it's such the quick picture that he paints there is so desperate and, right, but active and scrappy. It's so perfectly Keatsian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My dogs are barking.
This is going to be one of those things where I feel like we're off camera right now, but you're going to include this.
I told you rue the day you crossed me.
So that's the Bailey letter, right? But it turns out that Keats is writing multiple letters this day, at least 2, could be more. We might not have all of them. But so there's the letter to Bailey. But then he writes this second letter to Reynolds.
Yep.
And it doesn't quite have all of the cool stuff that we had with Bailey, but man, it is another packed letter.
Absolutely. And so if in the letter to Bailey we have all these inventive turns of phrase, in the letter to Reynolds we have just an amazing amount of allusiveness. This
Yeah.
is a Shakespeare letter.
Yeah.
There is Shakespeare through and through. Just everywhere you turn, there's a reference to Shakespeare. And in part, so Keats introduces this by saying, I would send you a little lyric poem I've been working on, but I'm still working on this Endymion thing. He's got 500 lines to go. He's near to the end.
Get in there. Oh, God. Come on. Come on.
But he says, if I weren't working on this long poem, I'd send you something. But he says, I am too anxious for you to enjoy the whole to send you a particle. That is, right? I want you to see this whole long poem. I can't just send you a particle. And so instead of sending his own little poetic particles, he says, by the way, I've been reading Shakespeare, and man, this guy's
got some game.
Yeah, he says, I ne'er found so many beauties in the sonnets. And this is the part we mentioned earlier. They seem to be full of fine things said unintentionally in the intensity of working out conceits. And then, like a good student, he gives his textual evidence.
There it is.
Right?
Yes, indeed.
Cites a couple sonnets. And then I love this part. So he says, he, as in Shakespeare, has left nothing to say about nothing or anything.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yep.
Which is such a funny way of posing it, right? But the point is that Shakespeare's written about everything.
Yeah.
So what can you do as Keats, right? You have to just follow Shakespeare.
Echo him.
Yep. And
which
so
he does.
Yeah. So for look at snails, you know what he says about snails. Shakespeare's even covered snails.
Yeah.
So
and it's so beautiful, right? So it's from Venus and Adonis, right?
Yeah.
And the quote, right, is, as the snail whose tender horns being hit shrinks back into his shelly cave with pain. It's like, so this idea of this kind of, right, so we have a sensitive creature out in the world, pain, circumstance, right, smacks it, self-storms, whack it, it responds, right, but then it's going to kind of tremblingly feel its way out into the world, right? So the snail is our picture of kind of sensitivity, of awareness, right, which then Keats will bring up in a letter from 1818, right, where he'll talk about the trembling snail horn of
perception of beauty.
Perception of
Snail horn perception of beauty.
Crazy, right?
That it
Comes
involves
back.
that. Yeah.
It's already kind of, it's gestating right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually, as you were talking, I was thinking about the veil of soul making too,
Of course.
right? Which is all about the necessity of a world of suffering
Pain,
to
that's right.
to make a soul, to go from
His tender horns being hit, right?
Yeah.
So the hitting,
right, you withdraw into your shelly cave with pain, but right, that's the thing that is necessary to move from just being an intelligence, as he poses it, right, a sort of sensing thing, to a soul which has a kind of identity that's always in the process of being shaped and reshaped and reformed. And the snail here in Shakespeare's Venus and Adonis works in that same sort of way.
I like it.
So we go from this the tender horns, right, the snail horn perception of beauty, to then I love this. So the next thing he says is Shakespeare overwhelms a genuine lover of poesy with all manner of abuse, talking about a poet's rage and stretched meter of an antique song, which, by the by, will be a capital motto for my poem.
Right, exactly.
Right? It's almost as if just in this moment he's like, hey, that's a good motto for Endymion, and then that is it, right? It's on the title page.
Yep.
And I love just the happenstance behind that, right?
Yep.
He's talking about Shakespeare to Reynolds, and then he realizes, hey, there's the motto.
That's the word. Yep. If so, look, that's certainly one option for how that dynamic works out. The other, of course, is like Keats is performing the moment of discovery.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we don't actually know.
That's right. What, I wrote that down, and oh my God, that's going to be it. Nah, I actually think the chances of that happening are actually rather slim. Like, now Keats is, as Christopher Ricks knows, right, he's prefigurative with this. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's felt these out before he puts quill to paper, right? So kind of felt out a lot of these things. So he's working out, some of them he's working out in the intensity of working out conceits or working out an idea, certainly. But some of them, that one to me, frankly, feels a little bit like a stretch, like, oh my God, I just discovered this.
I wholeheartedly disagree.
Very good.
And here's why.
All right.
With Keats' approach to publishing, he's a fly by the seat of the pants guy.
That's pretty good.
Right?
All right.
Think about what we know about that
That's
1817 volume. Right? I think you have a similar thing happening here. Right? He cares about the poem and the process, and right. I mean, he's working hard. He's laboring on these poetic lines,
sure.
Right? But when it comes to the book, he's like, let's get this thing out there.
Let's do this thing, right? Okay. Yeah.
What can we do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He writes to Haydn and says, hey, why don't you do a little frontispiece for me? Right?
Sure.
It doesn't happen, but it's
sure. Okay.
So I think this is a genuine moment where
actual sprezzatura.
I believe so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I will fight you to the death on that matter.
That will be the final episode of this week.
Yep.
Because we actually jointly own the rights to the name This Week in Keats. So if one of us dies, which one of us will?
Right. Then what happens to the rights? Oh, then we own it completely.
Then we call it This Month in Keats.
Oh, we can't. Oh, so we shouldn't fight to the death.
Near death? Anyway,
right. So
we're not going to do that.
So I actually think that in this moment we see Keats deciding.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's
motto
awesome
for my poem.
Wow. Beautiful. It's great.
Sorry.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So I guess the last thing we should talk about here
is the orgy of Shakespeare at the end of this letter.
Oh no! Well, no, that's important too. But no, I want to talk about Keats's boyish imagination.
Please do.
Okay, so careful readers of the KLP will know that all but one letter, and correct me if I'm wrong, video editor. All but one letter written to Reynolds, we have only through transcripts made by Richard Woodhouse.
Right.
So this is a transcript that we're reading, and we have this moment towards the end of the letter, and Keats writes this. Now, I hope I shall not fall off in the winding up. He's talking about the winding up, wrapping up of Endymion. I hope I shall not fall off in the winding up, as the woman said to the blank, I mean up and down. So we'll have to go back and look at the transcript, because at some point, someone, whether it was Woodhouse or one of his clerks, penciled in an attempt at...
we can recover that with new technology.
We can try.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what Rollins says is that this is an undecipherable penciled conjecture.
No. We can figure it out.
But in any case, right, this is...
Wait, what do you think goes there?
To my mind, it's some sort of
saucy joke.
Right.
Yep.
So he's talking about falling off in the winding up, as the woman said to the something, I mean up and down. There's some kind of boyish sex joke going on here.
Yep.
That's all I got.
But there's even then, like, later on, right, there's like, send me a little pullet sperm, right, and I get that
which is the
not,
Shakespeare reference,
right.
but of course.
Yeah, but a little pullet sperm, winding up and down. Anyway.
Yeah. So, the point here is just to to remind our readers that Keats is a young,
Man.
boyish man who likes to make stupid, silly jokes that are often bawdy.
Even in the midst of like reading his Shakespeare and being like, look at this amazing stuff that's that. Look at how beautiful that is. It's the side-by-sideness of it.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of the intensities, working out the conceits. It's the trembling snail horn beauty. It's the sensitivity to pain. And then it's like, and here comes this stupid sex joke.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, but I mean, think about Shakespeare in the sonnets and all the
of course.
the sonnet about the will in overplus, right? And I mean, there are all these body jokes in there too. So it makes sense that as he's thinking about Shakespeare, Keats would then turn to some sort of body joke.
This is in part why I'm very glad that this December, when we have the KLP, will feature numerous conversations about negative capability, that one of the people will be Brian Bates, talking about essentially Keats's pantomimical imagination with negative capability, and rereading it as something that is involved with comedy and silliness and overturning power structures and admitting into the idea of negative capability, the context of the pantomime, which is one of the clearest contexts of negative capability, and it's one of the most consistently kind of written out contexts, right? So we're kind of restoring that to negative capability, which
Absolutely.
is vital.
Yep. Yeah. And for those of you who haven't memorized the negative capability letter, first of all, go memorize it.
Absolutely.
Second of all, Keats is on the way back from a Christmas pantomime when he has this, not a dispute, but a disquisition with Dill. And so, it's a direct context in the sense that Keats was just at a pantomime, and then they're having this conversation on the way back from it, and that's when the idea strikes him.
Pantomimes, silly, bawdy, ludicrous, but then Keats is also reading it with like some really deep understanding of kind of the sense of how it is about overturning class structures and making new possibilities. So he's taking humor seriously. And here we've got seriousness and humor set side by side.
Yeah. Well, and one of the common strains in our conversations about Keats, we always come back to Keats, the comedian, right? That the comedian poet, which is itself a little pun on the chameleon poet, obviously. So Keats, I think, people understand, right? He's funny, he's playful, he's a practical joker. But I think too often the sort of serious Keats overwhelms the comedic Keats. And part of our collaborative work that we're going to continue doing, if we don't fight to the death at some point, is taking Keats's comedy seriously. And I mean, this moment, it's a kind of throwaway bawdy joke. I don't know if there's something that we can do about this that is all that significant, but it's one small piece of a larger puzzle in which I do think that Keats and his devotion to comedy is significant.
Sorry,
You want to defend this moment?
No, I was trying to think about how I was going to kill you. But Brian, it's going to be with comedy.
I hope so. Yeah, kill me with laughter. It's a good way.
That's my plan.
Yep. All right. Well, a threat of murder is
not at all
good a place
I'm
to
going
end
to kill you
his
with comedy.
Right. I'll take it. Yep. All right, Keats fans. I think we're out. This has been This Week in Keats. I'm Brian Rejack.
I'm Mike Theune.
We'll see you next time. Ciao.
Yeah, man, that was great. Done.
Best episode ever.
Wow. Each subsequent episode is the best one ever.